I'm inspired to share this story because I mentioned Marshall Rosenberg. Who's familiar with Marshall Rosenberg? Okay, most of you. He's the man who founded nonviolent communication, also known as compassionate communication. I met him 15 years ago, did a series of video and television projects with him, traveled with him, and that kind of got me on this track that I've been on for the last 15 years. And Marshall passed away on February 7th. So this is a true story of an experience that Marshall had. When Marshall was a boy, around 10 years old, he and his father went out to eat at a restaurant, and as they were leaving the restaurant, a group of adult men began to harass them because they were Jewish. And the harassment increased and increased, and the father didn't buy into it. He didn't try and fight them. He just tried to get his son to the car as quickly as he could. But before they could get to the car, the men intercepted them and proceeded to beat the holy hell out of Marshall's father, strictly because he was Jewish. Imagine being 10 years old and watching your father get beat up, strictly because of the same last name you have, Rosenberg. And this was the pivotal moment in Marshall's life. This is what set him on his journey of trying to understand human behavior. Fast forward 50 years, and Marshall's now traveling all over the world, basically going wherever people are inviting him, sharing his understanding of nonviolent communication. And he was invited to give a presentation at a Palestinian refugee camp in Israeli-occupied Palestine. And Marshall, being this beautiful man that he was, agreed to do it. And then he gets out there and kind of realizes what he's agreed to. Imagine a tent city surrounded like a prison, barbed wire, Israeli soldiers, machine guns, billy clubs. It's really a glorified prison. And all these Palestinians that are having to stay there because their home or their land or where they normally live is no longer accessible. And Marshall is hot. They've been forced to come to his presentation. They don't really want to hear from a Jew why they should be compassionate in their communication, but there was something they kind of had to go there. They were kind of forced into it. So here's this hot tent full of unhappy people who don't want to be in that camp, who don't want to hear what Marshall has to say, and he's got to get up and deliver his speech. So he gets up there and he's nervous. It's a hard scene, very, very difficult audience, and they're really not into it, and he's kind of stumbling through his words, and it's getting pretty funky. And then the heckling begins. He hears from about 2/3 of the way back, Jew, dirty Jew bastard. Well, now Marshall starts to really get triggered. And all of a sudden, he's back 10 years old, remembering what they did to his father, and he's getting really, really scared. And he's stumbling over his words, and it's getting worse and worse. And this guy, the heckler, is getting more and more aggressive. Kike, dirty kike bastard. Marshall's really trembling now, and he sees that the guards have heard what the heckler's doing, and the guards are on their way to pick him up and get him out of there. And Marshall's first thought, so perfectly human, his first thought is, good, get this guy out of here. But then Marshall has a holy moment. He has a moment where somehow he's able to think to himself, oh my God, am I going to just zip through this speech and get the hell out of here as fast as I can? Or am I going to make an attempt to demonstrate these tools? And in that moment, and he sees the guards are coming for this guy, and this guy's, going on, because now the guy thinks he's going to get yanked out of there, so he's just like firing volleys of obscenities at Marshall. And it's all happening very fast. And Marshall realizes he has to give himself an emergency dose of self-empathy. But before he can do that, he has to call off the guards. And so somehow he summons the strength to say, no, please, I want to hear what this gentleman has to say. And that takes the whole audience aback. That's a pattern disrupt. That grabs people's attention. And then Marshall gives himself that emergency dose of self-empathy. Oh my God, I'm so scared. But my longing to understand this man is going to trump my fear. I am here to understand what he's feeling and needing, and I'm going to do my best to demonstrate compassionate communication. Now the guy is pretty worked up. Do you see what this situation is? Do you see what your country has done? Your country's put us in here like animals, and America supports Israel. He's kind of going on and on like that. And Marshall's kind of pulling it together, and Marshall doesn't defend America. He doesn't defend Israel. He doesn't defend his being there. He practices what he teaches, feelings and needs. So, sir, you're very angry because a lot of your precious needs are not being met. You're damn right my needs are not being met. And he goes on a little bit more. And Marshall says, sir, I really do want to hear what you have to say. I really do. But I can hear you more effectively if you'd just be willing to slow down. And to whatever degree you can talk to me with respect would make it easier for me to take in the importance of what you're saying. Boundaries with compassion. The compassion piece is acknowledging the man wants to be heard. When people yell at us, when people are loud, they want to be heard. So he's acknowledging the man's need while setting the boundary. I really can hear you better if you'd be willing to just speak a little more respectfully. So go a little slower. The guy does that. He slows down, but he's still pretty worked up. And he says, this is horrible. I have a wife, 2 children, and I can't even go to my own home, my own place of work, where I can take care of my family the way they deserve to be taken care of. Wow, so much information. A wife, children, of course he's frustrated. He can't even go to his own place. He's relying on the food that they give him instead of being able to take care of his family. And Marshall just gives empathy and acknowledges how hard that is. Invites the man to come on the stage, and they talk. And Marshall just gives empathy and understanding and reflects back. And then brings up a few other people that also are going through pain and just acknowledges it and demonstrates beautifully compassionate communication. At the end of that presentation, the same man who was heckling him, the same man who's calling him a dirty kike bastard, he invites Marshall to his tent for a private Ramadan dinner. And that same man went on to become an NVC facilitator. And what I love about that story and what makes me cry is that moment where it's like, get this guy out of here. This is too painful. I don't want to deal with this. Get him out of here. We all are in those situations sometimes. I don't want my lover to be freaking out right now. I don't want to be freaking out right now. I don't want my lover to be interested in somebody else. I don't want whatever it is. It's so hard. It's so painful. I don't want to deal with this, please. But if we can give ourselves that emergency dose of self-empathy, yes, this is hard. But my love, my commitment to care, my commitment to compassion, my commitment to this person or this process or this life is going to trump my fear. Or it's going to be more, is what I'm going to choose over the ego that's just really scared. And so I invite you to remember that. And may we all learn how to manage our triggers. May we all be very accepting of our subpersonalities. May we learn to embrace and accept all aspects of self. Because when we honor ourself fully, we honor the entire universe. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jesus Christ, Bugs Bunny, Superman, Scott Catamas.